By default, Java executes statements one after another from top to bottom. Line 1 runs, then line 2, then line 3, and so on. But real programs need to do much more than that. They need to make decisions based on conditions, repeat certain actions multiple times, and sometimes stop or skip parts of a loop early. Control flow statements give your program exactly that power. There are three main categories. The first category is decision-making statements, which includes the if statement, the if-else statement, nested if statements, and the switch statement. These allow your program to ask a question and take different paths depending on whether the answer is true or false. The second category is looping statements, which includes the for loop, the while loop, the do-while loop, and the for each loop. These allow your program to repeat a block of code multiple times without writing it out again and again. The third category is jump statements, which includes break, continue, and labeled break. These allow your program to alter the flow of a loop mid-execution, either by stopping the loop entirely or by skipping the current round and moving to the next one. Understanding control flow is the foundation of writing programs that actually do something useful. Every algorithm, every business logic rule, and every interactive feature you build will use at least one of these tools. The if statement is the most basic decision-making tool in Java. It evaluates a condition that produces either a true or a false result. If the condition is true, the block inside the curly braces runs. If the condition is false, the block is skipped entirely and execution moves on to whatever comes after. The if-else extends this idea by providing a second block. If the condition is true, the first block runs. If the condition is false, the second block runs instead. Only one of the two blocks will ever execute. They are mutually exclusive. The if-else-if ladder is a common pattern where you chain multiple conditions together. Java tests each condition from top to bottom. The moment it finds one that is true, it runs that block and skips all the remaining conditions. If none of the conditions are true and there is a final else block at the end, then that else block runs as a catch-all. Nested if places one if statement inside another. Java evaluates the outer condition first. If the outer condition is false, the inner condition is never even looked at. Only when the outer condition is true does Java proceed to evaluate the inner condition. This pattern is useful when you have layered decisions, for example, first checking whether a user is logged in and then inside that checking whether the user has admin rights. Let us walk through this code step by step. We start with an integer variable called marks holding the value 72. We then enter an if-else-if ladder to determine the grade. The first condition checks whether marks is greater than or equal to 90. The value 72 is not greater than or equal to 90, so this condition is false. Java skips the first block and moves to the next condition. The second condition checks whether marks is greater than or equal to 75. The value 72 is not greater than or equal to 75, so this condition is also false. Java skips this block as well. The third condition checks whether marks is greater than or equal to 60. The value 72 is greater than or equal to 60, so this condition is true. Java enters this block and prints grade C. Once this block runs, Java exits the entire ladder and does not check the else at the bottom. We then declare two Boolean variables. iLogIdIn is set to true and isAdmin is set to false. The outer if checks whether iLogIdIn is true. It is true, so Java enters the outer block. Inside that block, the inner if checks whether isAdmin is true. It is false, so Java skips the inner if block and goes to the inner else block instead, printing welcome user. If iLogIdIn had been false, Java would have skipped the outer block entirely and gone straight to the outer else, printing please log in. the inner condition would never have been reached at all. The output is grade C on the first line and welcome user on the second line. The traditional switch statement takes a single variable, which can be an integer, a character, a string, or an enum, and jumps directly to the case that matches its value. This is more efficient and more readable than writing a long chain of if-else-if conditions when you are comparing the same variable against many possible fixed values. One very important behavior to understand in the traditional switch is fall-through. When a case block finishes executing, Java does not automatically stop and exit the switch. Instead, it continues running the code in the next case below it, even if that case does not match the variable. To prevent this, you must write the break keyword at the end of each case. Forgetting the break is one of the most common bugs in switch statements. The default case works like the else in an if-else chain. It runs when none of the other cases match the variable. It does not need a break because it is typically the last case. Enhanced switch, which was fully introduced in Java 14, solves the fall-through problem completely by using the arrow syntax. Each case uses an arrow instead of a colon, and each case is completely self-contained. There is no fall-through and no need for break. You can also list multiple values in a single case by separating them with commas. Enhanced switch can also be used as an expression, meaning its result can be assigned directly to a variable, making the code much shorter and cleaner. Let us walk through this code step by step. We start with an integer variable called day holding the value 3. We then enter a traditional switch statement that tests the value of day. Java jumps directly to the case that matches the value 3. Case 1 and case 2 are skipped entirely. Java lands on case 3 and executes its block, printing Wednesday. After the print statement, Java encounters the break keyword and immediately exits the switch. The default case is never reached because a matching case was already found and the break stopped execution. If the break had not been written after case 3, Java would have continued into the default block and printed other day as well. That is the fall-through behavior, and the break keyword is what prevents it. Next, we see the enhanced switch being used as an expression. The result of the entire switch is assigned directly to a string variable called type. The variable day holds 3, which matches the first case group listing the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The arrow tells Java to immediately return the string weekday and assign it to type. There is no fall-through possible here and no break is needed. The final print statement combines day and type to output the message 3 is a weekday. The output is Wednesday on the first line and 3 is a weekday on the second line. The for loop is the most structured loop in Java because it keeps all 3 loop control elements together in one single line, making it very easy to read and understand at a glance. Those 3 elements are the initialization, which runs once at the very start, the condition which is checked before every iteration, and the update which runs after every iteration. The execution order works like this. The initialization runs first and only once. Then the condition is evaluated. If the condition is true, the body of the loop executes. After the body finishes, the update expression runs. Then Java goes back and checks the condition again. This cycle of checking the condition, running the body, and running the update repeats until the condition becomes false. When the condition is false, Java exits the loop and continues with whatever code comes after it. The initialization can declare multiple variables separated by commas. The update can be any expression, not just a simple increment. For example, you can step by to using plus equals to, or count backwards using the decrement operator. All 3 paths are optional, which means you can write a for loop with nothing in the parentheses to create an infinite loop that runs forever until something inside the body stops it with a break statement. Nested for loops are two loops where one is placed inside the other. The outer loop runs once, and for each single iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop completes all of its iterations from start to finish. This pattern is commonly used for working with grids, matrices, and multiplication tables. Let us walk through this code step by step. The first loop counts up. The variable I starts at 1. Before every iteration, Java checks whether I is less than or equal to 5. Since 1 is less than or equal to 5, the condition is true, so the body runs and prints 1 followed by a space. Then I increments to 2. The condition is checked again, still true, so the body runs printing 2. This continues for I equal to 3, 4, and 5. When I becomes 6, the condition 6 less than or equal to 5 is false and the loop exits. The println after the loop moves the cursor to a new line. The second loop counts down. The variable I starts at 5. The condition checks whether I is greater than or equal to 1. While true, the body runs and prints I, then I decrements by 1. So it prints 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. When I becomes 0, the condition is false and the loop exits. The nested loop creates a 3 by 3 multiplication table. The outer loop controls the row number using I going from 1 to 3. For each value of I, the inner loop runs completely from j equal to 1 to j equal to 3. For each combination of I and j, the product I times j is printed followed by a tab character for spacing. When the inner loop finishes all 3 columns for one row, the println inside the outer loop moves the cursor to the next line before the next row begins. The total number of body executions in the nested loop is 3 times 3, which equals 9. The output is a neat 3 by 3 grid showing 1, 2, 3 on the first row, 2, 4, 6 on the second row, and 3, 6, 9 on the third row. The while loop is called a pretest loop because the condition is always evaluated before the body runs. If the condition is false right from the beginning, the body will never execute even once. This is different from the do-while loop, which we will see next. The structure of a while loop requires you to do 3 things. First, initialize a variable before the loop begins. Second, write a condition in the while parentheses that Java will check before every iteration. Third, update that variable somewhere inside the body of the loop so that eventually the condition becomes false. If you forget to update the variable, the condition will never change and the loop will run forever, which is called an infinite loop. The while loop is the right choice when you do not know exactly how many times the loop needs to run. For example, reading input from a user until they type a specific word, processing items from a file until you reach the end, or waiting for a server response. In all these cases, the loop needs to keep going based on a condition that depends on what happens during execution, not on a fixed count known in advance. Let us walk through this code step by step. The first section calculates the sum of numbers from 1 to 10. We declare sum starting at 0 and n starting at 1. The while loop condition checks whether n is less than or equal to 10. On the first iteration, n is 1, the condition is true, so sum becomes 0 plus 1, which is 1, then n increments to 2. On the second iteration, n is 2, condition still true, sum becomes 1 plus 2, which is 3, n becomes 3. This continues, adding each value of n to sum. After the 10th iteration, sum has accumulated 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 10, which equals 55. When n becomes 11, the condition 11 less than or equal to 10 is false and the loop exits. We then print the result, which is 55. The second section reverses the number 1, 2, 3, 4. We declare num as 12, 34 and reverse starting at 0. The while loop condition checks whether num is not equal to 0. On the first iteration num is 12, 34. We extract the last digit by taking num modulo 10, which gives 4. We then build the reversed number by multiplying reversed by 10 and adding the digit, giving 0 times 10 plus 4, which is 4. Then we remove the last digit from num by dividing by 10 using integer division, giving 123. On the second iteration num is 123. The digit is 3. Reversed becomes 4 times 10 plus 3, which is 43. Num becomes 12. On the third iteration num is 12. The digit is 2. Reversed becomes 43 times 10 plus 2, which is 432. Num becomes 1. On the fourth iteration num is 1. The digit is 1. Reversed becomes 432 times 10 plus 1, which is 4321. Num becomes 0. Now num is 0, so the condition num not equal to 0 is false and the loop exits. We print the value of reversed, which is 4321. The output is sum from 1 to 10:55 on the first line and reversed :4321 on the second line. The do-while loop is called a post-ist loop because the condition is evaluated at the bottom after the body has already run. This is the one key behavior that makes it different from both the while loop and the for loop. No matter what the condition says, the body of a do-while loop will always execute at least one time. The condition is only checked after that first execution to decide whether to repeat. If the condition is true after the body runs, Java goes back to the top and runs the body again. If the condition is false, Java exits the loop. From the second iteration onwards, the behavior is identical to a while loop. The only unique thing about do-while is that guaranteed first execution. The classic use case for a do-while loop is a menu-driven program. You want to show the menu to the user at least once, read their choice, and then keep repeating as long as they have not chosen to exit. With a while loop, you would have to show the menu before the loop and then again inside the loop, duplicating code. With do-while, you show it once inside the body and the condition at the bottom handles the repetition. Another good use case is input validation, where you must prompt the user and read their input at least once before you can check whether the input is valid. Let us walk through this code step by step. In the first section, we declare I with the value 10. We enter a do-while loop. The body runs immediately without any condition check. It prints the message do-while ran with I equals 10, then increments I to 11. Now Java reaches the while condition at the bottom and checks whether I is less than 5. The value 11 is not less than 5, so the condition is false and the loop exits after just one iteration. The body ran exactly once even though the condition was false from the very beginning. This demonstrates the defining behavior of do-while. In the second section, we declare J with the value 10. We enter a while loop. Before the body runs, Java checks the condition at the top, whether J is less than 5. The value 10 is not less than 5, so the condition is false immediately. The body never runs at all. Execution skips the entire while block and moves to the println after it, printing while loop was skipped. This direct comparison between the two loops makes the difference very clear. Both start with a value that makes the condition false. The do-while ran once anyway. The while ran 0 times. In the third section, we simulate a menu. Both choice and round start at 0. The body runs immediately, incrementing round to 1 and printing menu displayed, round 1. Then we set choice equal to round, so choice becomes 1. Java checks the condition at the bottom, is choice less than 3? Yes, so the body runs again. Round becomes 2. The menu is displayed for round 2. Choice becomes 2. Condition: is 2 less than 3? Yes. Loop continues. Round becomes 3. Menu displayed for round 3. Choice becomes 3. Condition: is 3 less than 3? No. So the loop exits. The output is do while ran with I equals 10 on the first line, while loop was skipped on the second line, then menu displayed round 1, round 2, and round 3 on the following lines. The for each loop was introduced in Java 5 to make array and collection traversal simpler and less error-prone. The syntax is very readable. For each element in the array, do something with that element. Java internally handles all the position tracking and index management. You never touch an index variable. Because you have no index variable, there is no risk of going out of bounds or making an off-by-one mistake. This eliminates one of the most common sources of bugs in traditional for loops. The for each loop works with any array and also with any class that implements the iterable interface, which includes all the standard Java collections like ArrayList, HashSet, and linked list. However, the for each loop has important limitations you need to be aware of. First, the loop variable receives a copy of each element, not a direct reference to the slot in the array. This means that if you change the loop variable inside the body, the change does not affect the original array. The array remains exactly as it was. Second, you cannot access the index position of the current element because there is no index variable. Third, you cannot iterate backwards using a for each loop. For any of these needs, you must use a traditional for loop instead. The for each loop is the right choice whenever you want to read through all the elements of an array or collection in order without needing to know their positions or modify them. Let us walk through this code step by step. We declare an integer array called nums containing the values 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. The first for each loop sums all the elements. The variable sum starts at 0. On the first iteration, n receives the value 10 and sum becomes 0 plus 10, which is 10. On the second iteration, n receives 20 and sum becomes 10 plus 20, which is 30. This continues for each element. After all 5 iterations, sum holds 10 plus 20 plus 30 plus 40 plus 50, which equals 150. The result is printed. The second for each loop works with a string array called langs containing Java, Python, and C++. On each iteration, the variable lang receives one string and prints it with the label language. So it prints language, Java, then language, Python, then language, C++. The third loop attempts to modify the original array by doubling each element. Inside the loop we write n equals n times 2. However, n is just a local copy of the element. Changing n only changes this local variable inside the loop. It has no effect whatsoever on the actual values stored in the nums array. The fourth loop then reads and prints all elements of nums to prove that the array was not changed. It still prints 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50, exactly as they were at the beginning. The output is sum, 150, then the 3 language names each on their own line, then array after attempted change followed by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 showing the original values unchanged. Break and continue are jump statements that change the normal sequential flow of a loop. They give you fine-grained control over what happens during iteration without needing extra Boolean variables or complex conditions. The break statement is a complete stop for the loop. The moment Java encounters break, it exits the loop immediately, no matter how many iterations were still remaining. Execution jumps to the first line of code after the closing curly brace of the loop. Break is most commonly used in search operations where you want to stop searching as soon as you have found what you are looking for. Continuing to search after finding the target would be wasteful. Break also appears in switch statements to prevent fall-through. The continue statement is a partial skip. When Java encounters continue, it abandons the rest of the code in the current iteration and jumps ahead to the next iteration. In a for loop, it jumps to the update expression and then checks the condition. In a while loop, it jumps directly back to the condition check. The loop does not end. It simply skips whatever code came after the continue in that particular iteration. Continue is commonly used to filter out certain values, for example to skip negative numbers, skip blank lines, or skip records that do not meet a certain criterion. An important thing to note is that both break and continue only affect the innermost loop they are placed in. If you have nested loops and you use break inside the inner loop, only the inner loop exits. The outer loop keeps running. To break out of an outer loop from inside an inner loop, you need a labeled break, which is covered in the next section. Let us walk through this code step by step. The first section searches for the value 9 in an array. We declare an integer array with the values 3, 7, 2, 9, 4, 1, and 8. We set target to 9 and found at to -1 as a default, meaning not found yet. The for loop starts with I equal to 0. At index 0 the value is 3, which is not equal to 9. At index 1 the value is 7, not 9. At index 2 the value is 2, not 9. At index 3 the value is 9, which matches the target. So found at is set to 3 and break fires immediately. The loop exits. Indices 4, 5, and 6 are never checked because the break stopped the loop as soon as the target was found. We then print that the target was found at index 3. The second section prints only odd numbers from 1 to 10. The for loop runs I from 1 to 10. On each iteration we check whether I is even by testing whether I modulo 2 equals 0. If the condition is true, the number is even and continue fires. Continue skips the print statement below it and jumps directly to the update expression, which increments I. So the even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 are all skipped. For odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 the condition is false, continue does not fire, and the print statement runs normally. The output is target found at index 3 on the first line and odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 on the second line. In nested loops, a plain break statement only exits the innermost loop it is placed inside. The outer loop continues running as if nothing happened. This is sometimes exactly what you want, but sometimes you need to exit multiple levels of nested loops at the same time, for example when you have found what you were looking for inside a deeply nested search and there is no point continuing either the inner or the outer loop. Labeled break solves this cleanly. You place a label directly above the loop you want to be able to exit from. A label is just a name you choose followed by a colon. Then inside the nested structure you write break followed by that label name. When Java executes that statement, it exits not just the current inner loop but the specific loop that carries that label, regardless of how many levels of nesting are in between. Labeled continue also exists and works the same way. Instead of exiting the labeled loop, it skips to the next iteration of that labeled outer loop. A common and practical use case is searching through a two-dimensional grid or matrix. You have an outer loop going through the rows and an inner loop going through the columns. The moment you find the target value, you want to record its position and exit both loops immediately. Without labeled break, you would need to use a Boolean flag variable, check it in the outer loop condition, and set it to true when the target is found. Labeled break replaces all of that with one clean statement. Let us walk through this code step by step. We declare a two-dimensional integer array called matrix with 3 rows and 3 columns. Row 0 contains 1, 2, and 3. Row 1 contains 4, 5, and 6. Row 2 contains 7, 8, and 9. We set target to 5 and declare found row and found kernel both starting at -1 as defaults, meaning not found yet. The label outer is placed on the line directly above the outer for loop. This is how Java knows which loop to exit when it encounters break outer. The outer loop starts with I equal to 0, which is row 0. The inner loop starts with j equal to 0. We check whether matrix at row 0 column 0 equals 5. The value is 1, not 5. We check column 1, value is 2, not 5. We check column 2, value is 3, not 5. The inner loop finishes row 0 without finding the target. The outer loop moves to I equal to 1, which is row 1. The inner loop starts again with j equal to 0. We check matrix at row 1 column 0. The value is 4, not 5. We check column 1. The value is 5, which matches the target. We record found row as 1 and found kernel as 1. Then break outer fires. Because we used break outer and not plain break, Java does not just exit the inner loop. It exits the loop that has the label outer attached to it, which is the outer for loop. Execution jumps completely past both loops and lands on the println statement below them. Row 1, column 2 and all of rows 2 are never visited. If we had used a plain break without the label, Java would have exited only the inner loop. The outer loop would have continued to I equal to 2, checking all of row 2 for no reason since the target was already found. The output is found 5 at row 1 column 1. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this explanation helped you clearly understand the control flow statements and its core components in a structured and easy way. Continue learning, keep practicing, and stay consistent with your preparation. More detailed concepts are coming next.